There is a story that originated from the Zeuxin island telling a tale of two dragon brothers. It is believed that the dragons were created by an unnamed god that dwelled amongst the seven, but remains unknown till this day. This unknown god created the dragons of Een, but unlike the dragons of fable, they did not look as such. The image of the dragons are still left to wonder, leaving mortals with only depictions and speculated images of what they once looked like. After the cataclysmic fall of Malakath, which caused the break of the world to transpire and corruption to exist, the dragons became heavily corrupted, which altered their makeup. They were changed into large lizard-like demigods, whose size ranged from the heights of the heavens themselves, down to the simplest of scalies. They had sharp horns adorn their heads and along their jaws and limbs. They had leathery wings with a wingspan that could encapsulate the entire sky and eclipse the sonar, basking the world in total darkness. They were said that they could breathe Ashur, as hot as the angriest mountain of smouldering fire and ash. The use Ashur was not the only element these scaly demigods could possess, as they were known to be extremely powerful May. With a seemingly natural ability to harness the elements of life, the dragons quickly became renowned masters of magical aptitude, far superior than those of the Elkai. With the corruption of Malakath came the deformation of the dragons. This resulted in the dragons creating different breeds and species of their kind, ranging in all types of colors, shapes, and body structure. Some came with multiple horns, some came without. Some were even flightless or lacked limbs and had nothing but wings. Some came in feathers where scales would be. The corruption of these demigods seemed to enhance the beauty of these mythical creatures rather than hinder them. However, with everything that is corrupted as such comes the reality of their downfall. The dragons of their time began to give in to the whispers of the evil one, whose corruption ran deep in their species. They were once seen as secluded creatures that often kept to themselves. However, they quickly became driven mad monsters. They began to attack other living beings and consuming them as feed. Using their large size, they quickly climbed to the top as the apex predators of their world. However, it is this very notion of how dangerous they've become that had branded them a huge threat to the society of Ain and forced not only the Kai to vanquish them, but the remaining akin that have survived the fall themselves. Even other beastkin of different races have banded together to combat against these flying foes, as the threat had breached their borders as well. The dragons that were not heavily influenced by the corruption did what they could to quell their kind of the evils and began to wage wars with one another. This betrayal of their kind drew the dragons dangerously close to extinction. As not to lose the nobility as well as the remaining numbers of their kin, the dragons took those which were not driven mad and fled to a secret island where it is fabled they remain. The whereabouts of this island is either very hidden or simply not known to the rest of the world, besides the dragons themselves. The island is heavily guarded and protected under the use of a magical cloak. However, there are rumors that a portal somewhere within Een can transport one to this island of the dragons. Finding the portal is the trick. Before the war against the dragons could spread throughout the lands, there were two brothers who foreseen the downfall of their kin and fled to another island now known as Zeuxin Island, where they hid away from the chaos. The two created a world unlike any of the regions of Ain. Their magical presence allowed life on the island to grow exceptionally large and plentiful. They fell in love with their new home and became the lords of the land. There had been other species living amongst the forests and trees of the island, which quickly took to their new lords and adapted to the sudden growth of plant life and insectoids that otherwise preyed upon them. To keep the lush life of the island as it is today, the two brothers planted a seed that would grow into a tree of life that held the element of Au. This constant flow of air magica allowed the alu that surrounded the island to be pushed ashore and allow the grounded plants to drink. Those that the cascading waters from the beach could not reach would be rained down upon by the bellowing winds. The life of the Zeuxia seemed well. However, all was not at peace with the two Lund dragon brothers, for there was an inner struggle that plagued them both. The corruption of their kind, though deeply rooted in their blood, can be thwarted by the sheer will of the one inflicted. To do this, one would have to submit themselves to the 7 gods and pray to them. Though the 2 brothers were strong-willed, even the evils of Malakath could not be beaten alone. One day, one of the 7 gods came to one of the brothers and taught him the ways of praise and the faith in believing in the gods' ways. Having no choice and seeking to help himself as well as his brother, the older of the 2 began to listen to this, God whom he could not see, for the God came to him in only but a whisper in his ears. Regardless of this, the older brother would heed the words of warnings and teachings from this God, so that he may also teach his brother to do the same. However, the other brother was not so keen in becoming a follower. How could he trust someone or something he could not see with his very own eyes? Despite his brother's lack of faith in the gods, the wiser one never gave up on trying to save him. He would push this newfound way of teaching the religion until his brother broke down and began to listen to what he was trying to do for him. Before the older brother could have a breakthrough with his teachings of faith to his brother, something unexpected happened. Malakath came to the brother of great struggle in the guise of a god of benevolence. He called himself the god of the Lunis and would help the brother in need. He promised that he would cleanse the evil within him, and he would be saved from the wrath of the other gods if he gave submission to him, and him only. Using the belief in the gods themselves, this shade of Malakath manipulated the younger brother into believing that he could erase the evil that tormented him by praying to the moon every night. Because of this blinded lack of faith in the Divine 7, the younger brother fell deeper and deeper into the mouth of the corrupted one, to the point where he no longer was recognizable to his brother, who questioned his belief in this so-called God of the Lunis. This conflict of faith and ultimate betrayal forced the 2 loving brothers to fight each other in a deadly combat that ended the life of one and forever left the other to a life of loneliness. Dragons are known to have lives of longevity, and the 2 brothers were no exception. Though many years have passed with the birth of new species such as the talons and the luns, as well as a few akin, the lingering threat of the lost brother and his corruption remained as a constant reminder of just how strong the negativity of the fallen one can be, for he would be resurrected from the dead and wreak havoc with his fury towards his brother and the mortals of Zuxin. The older brother was once again forced to go against his beloved brother and slay him a second time. However, to ensure that he would not return to the mortal realm and enact his hatred upon it, he was sealed away in orbs and secured around the neck of the older brother in order to safekeep the evilness from the mortal world. Before being sealed away, the tainted brother had managed to fatally wound his brother. The wound was so great that the older brother perished soon after the battle, leaving the orbs that were once secured around his neck to be scattered and lost. Over time, the orbs had been found by the talons and luns of the island, who have found themselves spiritually drawn to them. Through the orbs, they have been told the story and tragedy of the 2 dragons' brothers, and have taken it upon themselves to carry out the older brother's creed, to keep the land safe from the madness of the corrupted brother. They have built shrines in order to house these orbs, and are under the ever-watchful eyes of the ones tasked with protecting them from falling into the hands of evil. There are 3 orbs in total, and they all must be kept separated from each other, for it is believed that conjoining the 3 will combine and strengthen the desperate effort of the evil brother's sheer will to be free and release him. To further honor the fallen Lun brother in his plight to save his kin, the belief system in the divine gods are daily practiced through the form of meditation, prayer, and even in the form of different physical fighting styles known as Tekka, Tai Chi, and Taikuan, that relies heavily on the spiritual connection of one's body and soul in order to practice it effectively. This fighting technique was created by the Luns, and thusly practiced by the Zuxia.